she in? Come on. Okay, we'll get going, guys. We'll get going. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is how the brain can affect your ability to change habits. The one thing that the brain's really, really good at, and its main purpose, is obviously to protect you. So when you look at the brain system, the very, very base of the neck, just above the spinal cord, the first part is called your reptilian complex. And this is where things like survival instinct, protection, aggression, mating, dominance, and also that flight or freeze comes in. Next, what you've got is part of the old mammalian, the original part of the brain is called the limbic system. And that's where things like motivation, emotions, goal behaviors, goal-driven parts of the brain are. And they sort of feed in then to the reptilian part. Then the next part of that, if you've got something called your neocortex, and I'm no brain expert, so don't ask me too many complicated questions, but this is where language, abstraction, reasoning, logic, and meaning sort of sit. So a lot of the things that, you know, clients and people trying to change habits struggle with happen at a brain level. And you look from the brain stem going into the reptilian part, you have the reaction. So there's no cognition. So everything that we try and do is obviously you're trying to think of it. You're trying to be cognitive about it. Whereas that being in the frontal lobe takes a lot more to sort of filter down, so certainly into the reptilian parts that are trying to, their instinct is to just to protect you. When you look at the limbic system, so you've got the reptilian part first, then the limbic system. So you've got a little part at the front of the limbic system called the hippocampus. And this is the conversion of short-term and long-term memory and also spatial awareness. Then looking in to just below that, you've got something called your amygdala. Now this is like, if you imagine an alarm bell, it sort of triggers when you come under threat. Okay, so if a car suddenly shoots past in front of you and you jump out the way, you haven't thought about that cognitively. It's an instinct. So this is what the amygdala does. It switches off any kind of cognitive part of the brain and just kicks in that instinct part. Okay, so this is all based from memory, and it's reactive. It contains these short-term alert stories that stop you getting killed. It's the start of that cascade of fight, flight, freeze. And it's mainly negative memories, because most of the things that are negative, the things that are the biggest threat to you. Okay. Negative people actually see everything as a threat. So it's really important to try and get that when we talk about that positive mental attitude, they tend to be the people that change habits easier because they have that positive thought. When you get that negativity set in, that's when the brain sort of tends to be under constant threat. So the responses that you will probably see, you'll know whether you fit into that sort of fight, flight, or freeze, because there's common signs with each of these reactions. And this starts to give you an idea of where you can really focus on trying to understand what barriers are in your way, in a sense. So with fight, you look at anger, aggression, obvious resistance, and a language of, I can't do that, or won't, or, refusal and blockage of advice. So, if somebody's telling you, oh, you need to eat, protein, loads of green veg, and you don't eat that, and you just automatically be like, nah, not doing that. Then you got flight. So this is where people run away. They're evasive, rapid withdrawal, often staged through things like lateness, presenteeism, absenteeism, missed appointments, excuses, that sort of thing, rather than being a sort of a player, if you like, an all-round player. Then you've got freeze. So this is where they nod in, you nod in the right areas, but actually take little actions. Again, presenteeism is something, so they're stuck and fearful of to, you know, sometimes to even leave. They'll just be there, nod along in the right places, and stay, you know, that you constantly, you'll still be a gym member and that sort of thing. Let me just bring something back up there. There we go. Right. Hello, Val. Right. So the limbic system itself, that's where a lot of the stuff we need to do, we need to change ourselves, is sat in there, even though what we want to do is cognitive. But if that amygdala is going off, if we're feeling under threat because of change, this isn't going to happen. So what you've got to do is try and identify and reduce any kind of threat first. You've got the limbic and the frontal. So the frontal part, then you've got the limbic, and they're opposite. So you can't actually have both of those working at the same time. It just doesn't happen. Limbic is obviously your survive priority, and when the alarm goes off, logic switches off. What you need to do then is actually pick your battles and such. If you chooses flight, blood and things like that, shunts to your arms, your legs, that sort of thing. So it's always physiology over psychology when it comes to the brain. Priority is safety, but then what you can do is if you've got a prediction, you're more likely to be able to respond. Okay, so if, say, Dan, as you in the army, if there was a guy you were put up against for a fight, he was skinny, quite small, you think, I can win that. And the reason is because you've probably had that experience in your past where you can predict that you're going to win that fight. So you're more likely to stand there and actually face that threat. Okay. So memory, it all draws on past experiences. The response, do you have an appropriate response? What can I do? Can I win this fight? And if you're already negative and think you can't, you're obviously less likely to. That threat's going off, so you're less likely to change these responses. So that reptilian part of the brain instantly kicks in and it's reactive. Even down to the point of going to the fridge. That can be a reactive response. And it's through behavior, it's through something that could have been a childhood story. So if you were a kid and your mother told you to clean your plate every time you ate a meal, you're going to have problem with portion control and things like that, and you're always going to finish it. So the habits are based in the limbic system, and they preempt threat. So the method of predicting the future is removal of habit, and it gives you an unknown outcome. So you can't predict it if you remove that habit. So the best thing to do with things like that is to actually have a replacement rather than just cutting something out. So if you go to the pub 5 times a week, we'll look at reducing that rather than cutting it out completely. Okay, so you're given time to sort of acclimatize. If you've got a slower response, and you've got a replacement there to not trip that alarm system. Okay, there's 3 main causes of threats to the brain and to the reptilian part. Could be too fast. Okay, so you've then got a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability. Could be too slow. So the fear actually that the outcome and the investment won't outweigh each other, if that makes sense. And then if you've got no clarity. Okay, so you must clarify what you want to do. You need to break it down and build a map as such. Okay, so step by step. The bigger the threat, obviously, the more unlikely you are to complete it. So building a map and breaking it down into smaller chunks is a damn sight easier to deal with within the brain. Okay, so again, this sort of brings us on to then time and intensity. You look at time, how that affects your lifestyle. If you're working 6 days a week and you're trying to fit in 3 gym sessions a week or 4, that might be too much, too quick. How is it going to impact on your life? So is your lifestyle at this point good enough to be able to do that many sessions and that sort of thing? The cost, if the cost is too high in terms of impact on lifestyle, then that becomes a threat as well. Okay. Threat is obviously, it's a belief-based system. So what you have to do is disable the threats through investigation. So you need to ask yourself questions. What's important about it to you? You know, what are the core beliefs, if you like, towards your goal? What feels too fast? What feels too slow? And what feels stuck? And we have to identify these things. You have to give them not a voice, but an identity. so you can then face them head on. We know then how to start breaking them down. So pacing, slap or caress. It's a really good one. Most people would rather be caressed than slapped, apart from maybe Graham. Smaller threats over a longer period of time, they allow for that acclimatization. So you've got to find the right pace for you. Okay. The more unpredictable things are in your life, the more important the predictable things become as well. So this is why prediction is such a huge thing when it comes to changing habits. We need to know what's the outcome, and we can borrow that as well from clients, from people around us, from the community of FOF, that sort of thing. What gets fired together as well gets wired together. I've used that quite a lot in the past. So if you do something for long enough, they become wired together. So if you have a really stressful day at work, when you come home, because you feel stressed, you automatically go for that glass of wine. That over time becomes something that becomes wired. But what we can also do with that is work on the positive side of things with that as well. So things like a happy song. If we're in a bad mood and we play a happy song, it starts to make us feel better. So there's positive aspects we can use from that fire and wire type thing as well. It happens with people as well. So if you have a really good friend, it might not be your partner, people who work out together, that sort of thing, and it's somebody that you trust and you feel happy with, again, it's something more likely that you're going to be able to carry on with and do longer term. A good feeling or emotion is worth 1,000 reps. So goal seeking and things like that. So we're looking at dopamine as well, which affects obviously the brain. It's that goal seeking hormone. It's the feel good factor, and it can work in a bad way as well. So if we eat things like a chocolate bar, that dopamine could be released just going to the shops to get it. So you might not actually enjoy it when you get it, but it's that dopamine hit. So what we need to do with that is having the thrill of the hunt. So this is where we break down the smaller goals. So we keep that dopamine flowing rather than one long massive goal. We just keep that dopamine flowing. If the dopamine stops, you tend to go back to your old behavior. So again, say you've got, you decide to do a London Marathon, not at the minute, but if you do that, so that's one massive goal. When you complete that, that's when the dopamine stops. So we need something else to carry on. Otherwise, we're just going to go straight back to old habits. So massive goals create huge desire, but we need to maintain plausibility. So require versus desire. Do you require it? Is it true? So going back to that sort of glass of wine to unwind at the end of the day, is it true you need that glass of wine to actually make yourself feel less stressed? Probably not. It's probably not actually doing you any favors, is it? It's probably keeping that stress level up with the toxicity of alcohol, that sort of thing. So 180-degree turnarounds, things like that are probably going to equal threat. You want comfortable yet challenging, so it lessens the threat. Making small changes in different areas are going to equal big changes. So if we say we attack one thing out of our nutrition, we make one change with our sleep pattern, one change with our mindset, and one change with exercise. They're going to be some huge changes overall with 4 smaller changes. So you just need to might address sort of one area at a time. Even that's going to be a positive step forward. So identifying the game would come next. What makes it worthwhile to you? Your core desired feelings. What is it that's really driving you to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning to come and join us on Zoom? Keeping it down. What are we really looking for? So is it weight? Is it looking good? Is it feeling good? What is the purpose to it? If we identify these things, we're more likely to work towards them. And measuring the success, I always advise a lot of people to keep an emotional bank account. So even if it's some things that you do regularly day to day, acknowledge it, what you're going to do, you're going to build up that sort of positive bank account. So when something negative does happen, you just take a chunk out of that positive stack. Yeah. If we're on a flat line and not noticing these positives that we do all the time, we're going to go below the line and start to have that negativity creep back in. So set yourself up for small wins. A win's a win, doesn't matter how big it is. Using visual or real ways of seeing results is a really good way. So I've always said, you know, rather than jumping on the scales, which we all know can go up and down, using something like a pair of jeans to keep trying on rather than those scales, or a motivational picture, things like that are really good sort of positive impacts. And like I say, just keeping a note in this emotional bank account of all your positive gains. So when you vocalize something, it just becomes more real. It adds meaning and it adds belief. Becomes part of your psychology. So actually that's when it starts sinking into that limbic system. Okay, and once we start hitting the limbic system, it's going then from cognitive thinking into a more reactive side of things. You can create this inspiration, like I've said to you before, by borrowing someone else's predictions, experiences. So you guys, you know, should use us coaches to give you those positive predictions and outcomes, and friends and people who are working out alongside you. I think this is what's so good about the FOF community, is that, you know, you see like the client of the year and that sort of thing, and all these little things can give you drive to carry on and keep going. And, you know, there's always falling off the wagon as well. You know, there's going to be times where life just gets too tough. We fall off for a week or two. We go on holiday. We put on a couple of inches. But it's about getting back on the wagon rather than just falling off and being all depressed about it. Environment can have a massive impact. So when you go home, if you've got a messy bedroom, you go back to that. This should be a place of relaxation. If it's messy, it's going to create more stress, more threat. So little things like that. Have a look around your home. Other things that bother you that, you know, that you can change and give you more of a positive feeling when you're at a place to relax. Change your wardrobe. No more fat clothes. That's probably a bit un-PC. But if we get rid of the clothes that are probably slightly too big for us, there's no going back. Yeah. So look, it's an expensive thing if you start putting on weight then. So removing these triggers. Picking the team, big one. So social support. This is where, you know, this comes in. Friday night entertainment night. People around you that can support you and drive you along. It's not always the people that are actually close to us. So it may not be, you know, husband, wife, best friend. They might not actually be our best support. It may be, again, people that you don't know that well, but you see all the time in the gym, or, you know, that sort of thing. I know a lot of you sort of go out with other members of FOF and have social events, things like that. And these are all good scaffolding structures that we can put up to help us carry on achieving. You're obviously more likely to succeed in a team than alone. Bit cheesy, I know. So the three things we really, really need to do is define. Okay, what do you want help with is always a big one. You know, ask for help. Why? How do you want to feel? What are you struggling with and why? So these things need to be identified. Write them down, put them on the fridge, you know, all that sort of thing will help. You realize what the threat is, you know what it is, you work towards it then. Refine. So we need to refine, identifying everything that's not the goal. So what you create then is knots, and we need to untie those knots, and we need to do it a little bit at a time, make ourselves feel unstuck. And then the last one, just so I can shut up, is clarity. What solutions are you seeking? You know, what is stopping you from getting there? We need to identify these things. What must you have this information in order to be able to navigate the course to your final destination? So we need to build that map and find out where we're going and have little stop breaks, yeah, all the way through. Any questions? God. Interesting one.
Would you like to summarize it in a few words?
Yeah. Define, refine, and clarify, Penny.
Well, you're supposed to do this.
No, the thing is, what you've got to do is identify the things that are in your way, identify what could be a threat to your future success, I suppose. Once you identify those, the monster's out the closet as such, and then you can deal with it. But it's a case of breaking it down, having a support network around you, positive mental attitude, Penny and Val and everybody else.
Yeah, but I guess you've got to define what success is first.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's different for everybody. So
exactly, yes. I mean, I would personally have to define what success is for, and you would. And, yeah.
It takes a while to sit down and sort of, write these things down and be really honest with yourself. And, the guys around you here, these are the guys that can sit down with you and help you sort of identify those things,
I think it's got to be something that you truly want and you really believe in as well, because we can give you, we can say, all right, we want you to put this amount of muscle on or lose this amount of fat. But if you don't believe in it and you don't believe that you can get there, or you're not really that enthused by it, then it's not the goal for you.
That's it.
You've got to think.
I had my little aim, which was to do the half marathon, but that's gone now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think longer term,
I still do it, Penny.
It's just
on hold, Penny.
You got to think longer term. So again, it's why you're doing it, whether it's to look good, feel good, show off to your mates with your guns.
It's just to see if I can do it.
But again, we constantly need those bite-sized goals, those half marathons, those other things to keep that dopamine flowing, to keep achieving something every, it doesn't have to be every day, every few weeks, keep it flowing so we don't go and shove our face full of cake.
Yeah. Well, my success, I guess, at the moment will be not to go backwards.
Yeah. But keep that in mind. Make it real. Make it real. Keep it real. You all right there, Val?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good. Any questions, or you just like that?
Yeah, that's my life at the moment.
Is it? Identify your threats, Val.
No, I am trying to stay positive. Some days it's really hard.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think, I've been better than I thought I was at the beginning. I thought, I'm not going to get through this. But you take each day, don't you? And
this is where you've got to find those small positives in every day.
That's what I'm trying to do, make notes of all the little positives, no matter how small they are.
Emotional bank account.
Yeah.
Fabulous stuff. All right. Well, any questions from you guys at my lot? I need to give my voice a rest now after 2 hours of training and now this.
When you were on furlough, Richard, how did you find it, and how did you stay positive? And
I got in the garden and chopped down 25 metres of hedging. It kept me fit.
But did you get days where you thought, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite lucky where I live in a house where there's quite a few people. So actually, socially, it's not that much of an issue for me. I think for people who have been, stuck in maybe a 2-bedroom flat, it must be absolutely horrific. And I've got, big gardens. Thanks. You off, Craig?
No, that was no. You were saying for people who've been stuck in a 2-bedroom flat, and that was me waving.
Oh, that's you. You had a week so far? Are you climbing the walls yet?
I've got a week, mate, and I'm struggling.
Oh yeah.
Come Sunday, they're going to let you out more than once.
You've only got 7 more weeks, mate. I hope so. I was going to buy a bodysuit and just go out, I think. But,
I was saying to the guys just before, I've had to make like a little timetable for myself, and I had to literally draw it out. So I've got like hour slots, days of the week, and exactly what I'm on that day. And then, if there's like a couple of hours, then I can do my lazy stuff in that sort of time, like, sit there on Netflix or just sit in the garden or whatever. But I know, like, I've got that positivity because I've achieved what I need to do. Because I find that works better than doing a to-do list, because a to-do list would be like, I'll do that tomorrow. I can do that tomorrow. I can do that tomorrow.
Chore, isn't it?
Yeah. I can relate to that. To-do lists are putting off lists.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that to do is going to take too long to do, so I'm going to do that tomorrow, rather than like an hour chunk, right, do as much as I can, there you go, and then we'll do it the next day. So I find that works a bit better for me.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
I think it's like you said earlier, Rich, about breaking things down. Like, so for me, I've made like an overall, this is all the stuff I need to have had done by the end of furlough. And then I think, obviously, like you said, because that's quite a big chunk of stuff to look at, I think within that, it's then just at the start of each day almost, even if it's just 3. Even if, for me, I find even if it's stuff that I know I'll do anyway, like walk the dog, or, I think, like you said, just having something that you can tick and just get that little win or that little buzz of like, I've done that, even if it's something really simple. It's just grafting for those little wins, like you said, just to kind of keep you going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're massively important.
All those big things, Craig, will be all in the last week of furlough.
Literally.
Last 2 days.
It'd be the Sunday night, and my list would be about that long, thinking, okay, where do I start?
The last day will be like that 60-minute makeover program we used to see on ITV. I'd be flying about doing everything.
Brilliant stuff. Good. Excellent. Well, lovely chatting with you all. Or me talking at you, rather.
That was good, Rich. Good info.
Thank you for coming, Val, Penny, Graham, EP, Craig, Shazine, I think's there. I don't know. Oh.
Thank you, Richard. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Val. Lovely to see you as well. We'll catch you guys soon. Take care.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.